Angel of light, come into me. Show me what I need to see.
Welcome to the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria, an inspirational thought leader that offers transformational perspectives based on my unique experiences as a woman born without arms and legs. I feel like my life has been full of small victories that has led me to discover the greatness within. I believe that there is no summit upon which we reach our greatness. I believe it is a culmination of small victories achieved moment by moment when we turn toward the inward battle where we get to choose despair or hope, misery or miracles, defeat or victory. My goal is to awaken your potential, your purpose, and your power so that you can discover the greatness that lives within you. Think of this podcast as your weekly portion of tools, stories, and teachings that help you reflect on the small victories in your life. Thanks for tuning in, and let's begin. Welcome to another episode of the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria. Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, a purposeful job, a decent life, but still felt a quiet ache for more? Maybe it's not about doing more, but being more. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by James Robbins, an internationally recognized leadership speaker and the author of The Call to Climb. He's here to share what happens when we stop living for the crowd and start honoring the soul's whisper. This conversation is a wake-up call for anyone standing at the edge of change, held back by fear, and ready to rise. If you've been asking, is this all there is? This episode is for you. James, thanks for coming on the show.
Pauline, thank you for the invitation. So great to be here.
I knew when I met you for the first time and you started talking, I was like, oh yeah, this is a good fit. This is the guy, like my people type person. I love speaking about anything that helps people know and practice that they are made for more. So I'm excited to jump into your story and into what you teach people from, it sounds like a lived experience. And I know when we spoke earlier, you did talk about how you had a job that was really purposeful, and yet you still felt some sort of discontent. So if you could just take us back, let's start at the beginning of this story before you got to where you are today and what probably was the catalyst to help you get to where you are today. So if you could just share your story about what was that ache and how did that feel?
Yeah, that moment was definitely a catalyst moment. So I've been working in a not-for-profit sector and doing a job that a lot of other people wanted that job and thought it was amazing. And of course, I thought, well, of course this is amazing. But as the years went on, I started to feel like, well, but why am I not happy here? And I actually felt guilty for being unhappy because everyone else was like, you got such a great job and you're so lucky. And I'd be, yeah, I am lucky. But then again, driving home after work, I'd be like, but I don't want to do this anymore. But at the same time, I felt like I couldn't quit. And you spend years of your life getting into something, and then just to completely take a right turn almost seems irresponsible. And I remember the feeling back then was I just started to get more and more, I guess, lifeless. You start to get dead inside. And we're not talking about like a bad week or a bad month, but where month after month after month, you're not waking up from it. And that's when something's wrong, right? That's when the soul is nudging you that, hey, there's something else for you, but you've got to have the courage to take a listen to it. So that's really where my journey began. And unfortunately, I didn't really listen to it in that time. I just did what a lot of other people do. Like, well, I've just got to make this work. And I had young kids at the time and just keep going. And so I just kept pushing through. And eventually it's like my body teamed up with the soul and said, no, we're not going any further. And I just got really sick in a bizarre way. Like I got really sick. I was so exhausted. I went to the doctor, had all these tests, cancer, lupus, and they're like, no, you're healthy. There's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, no, I can't even get out of bed. So it was in those moments I'm like, okay, you have to listen. And that's actually when I stumbled upon the work of Dr. James Hollis. So he's a Jungian psychoanalyst, brilliant writer, but he writes about how at some point, usually during the second half of life, that the soul will summon you to a conversation. But most people avoid the appointment. And I definitely had avoided the appointment until it's just like you can't escape it. And that's when you have to take a look inside and go, okay, wait a minute. What am I here to do? What's my real purpose? And so that was definitely a seminal moment for me.
What advice would you give someone who has that same nudge or feeling or that I love that summoning of the soul conversation, but is too scared to take the step?
For sure. So here's the thing. A lot of us come to this place and we know something's not right, something's not in alignment, but then we're not sure like, okay, but what? And part of the problem is we get caught into this, what am I supposed to do? If I'm not supposed to do this, then what am I supposed to do? And we start thinking jobs, we start thinking careers. And the problem is there is we attach purpose to like a vocation. But the reason that you're here is so much bigger than a vocation. Like your purpose really is to bring the most authentic and honest version of you to this world. That's your gift to the world. And it's also your gift to live that out. It's a little bit like, it's like the soul is like the seed of an oak tree, right? The seed of an oak tree, if you ask the seed, well, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to be an oak tree. But yeah, but what do you want to do? I'm sure I'll do many things as an oak tree, but my intention is I just want to grow into that oak. And we're like that, right? We're just called to bring ourselves to the world and tap into those gifts, those strengths, those things. And you could probably do 1,000 different jobs that would all be within your calling, so to speak. But it's more aligned with you bringing you to the planet. You're not having to shut parts of you off. To your question about what do people do when people start to look in and they think maybe there's something else, but they're afraid to do it. And I can relate with that because it took several times for me to just create some separation, which for me is always like getting into nature and having some time and then just asking myself, okay, James, what is it that you want to do? What do you want? Which is a difficult question for people because a lot of people, they either don't know themselves well enough, so they can't answer that, or what they truly want, they either don't feel worthy of, or they feel like they just couldn't do that. And it would be so scary to try. And so our fear just subconsciously puts us back in line, back in place. And then we just live this small pattern again, because at least it's like the devil we know is safer than the devil that we don't. And so it doesn't mean that you can't live a good life, doesn't mean that you can't be successful, make money, retire, travel, have vacations. But it also doesn't mean that you're living your best life in terms of the reason that you're here.
I know a lot of people who feel like they should be grateful, like their life is great. They have no need for anything or desire for anything material wise. And yet there's this level of discontent that they can't explain. And like you mentioned, the guilt, there's some level of guilt that they feel, not just feeling grateful. And then the reason I'm asking this question is because I know so many of my friends are like that. So it's not just, as you're listening to this, just James who's gone through this. This might be something that you're feeling right now. I know I've felt it in the past. There's just something else, something more. What's a good first step? Because I think even if you ask that question to somebody, what do you want? They probably couldn't even answer that.
Yeah, a good first step, even if you can't answer that question, but you know that you want to come up with an answer, a pre-step that you could take is to create what I would call your spiritual compass, which is more like think about the major areas of your life and what's going to define success for you as you go throughout this life. Because when we think about it, for most of us, success actually isn't the dream home in the mountains or the second vacation property on the beach, though those might be goals. They're not the thing that defines a satisfying life for you, right? What defines a satisfying life is actually an emotional signature that's different for everyone, but there's a certain emotional signature because even the things we want them because it creates a certain feeling for us. But whatever those feelings are, we can create that here and now. And so what we want to do is create a spiritual compass, which is like, look at the main areas of your life. Like for me, it's things like being the parent of adult children, my health, my friendships, being true to my soul. These are different areas. And for each one of these areas, you want to ask the question, well, what do I believe about this? What do I believe about being the parent of adult children. Not what my parents believe, not what my preacher tells me to believe, but what do I believe about it? And what do I want this to look like? So the area with me and my adult children, what do I want that to look like? Okay, well, what's going to be required of me and what's my commitment? And it's coming up with these commitments that you're making in all these areas of your life. And if you begin there, that's where you start to get more in alignment and less focused on but what am I supposed to do? Okay, well, just put that on hold for a bit and let's talk about what is a successful life for you. Create that spiritual compass, create the commitments that come out of that, and then be someone who is, I'm going to keep this commitment. For me, I have 7 commitments. I'm going to keep these 7 commitments. And that, more than anything I buy or anything that I accomplish, those 7 commitments, that's success for me. That's success in my life. And that was a big shift for me to get off of what was in my bank account or what I achieved in life. It's more how am I living? So that would be a good first step. But the second one is because that helps you get to know yourself more. And then you can make better decisions about what it is you want. And let me give you an example of this. So for years, I had this rock that I had engraved $1 million on it. And I just kept it in my pocket every day. I traveled, I'm going through TSA checkpoint, I take the rock out. Like I carried it with me everywhere. This idea of keep your goals in front of you, right? Well, 3 years later, after carrying this thing for over 1,000 days, I was no closer to that goal. And it almost became like this mockery, this thing mocking me in my pocket. And then one day I sat down and I thought, well, why did you want this though? Like, why was this so important among all these other goals that you would write this on a rock and carry it in your pocket? And I just got quiet and listened. And I realized that the reason I wanted this, because I thought, well, what will I get when I have this? And I thought, then I'll feel successful, which means I wasn't feeling successful, but that was completely my metric. And I thought, so this goal is about removing your shame. Well, you don't need that goal to remove the shame. So that's an example of as you start to get more clear about what's truly important, then you're able to evaluate some of these goals to see how ego driven that they are. Because some of these ego driven goals, they seem great, but yet they're actually so out of alignment for us. And as we pursue them, even if you get there, like an ego driven goal that's out of alignment are the kind of goals that once you get there, you feel a bit empty after. Like, oh, well, that didn't accomplish what I thought it was supposed to accomplish. So that would be a couple of first steps, anyways.
Thank you for going deeper on that for me and for our listeners. I think that's a really important distinction for people to make because I think a lot of us come from this idea of, okay, my goals are based on the circumstances I want to create around my life versus the value behind those circumstances. So if your goal is to make $1 million and you ask yourself, but why was that important to me? Then you can get down to the real motivation of your goals. And I remember having this paradigm shift because I remember starting my business and going, oh yeah, I want my business because I want freedom and fulfillment. And I did some inner work, which I think is extremely important, which is what you help people do, I believe. First, because that is necessary first. You have to do the inner work before you can do the outer work. And I remember having this paradigm shift of like, oh, I wanted the freedom because I don't have the freedom. And so it was just a complete eye-opening moment for me. And the way you're describing how we can really honor our soul's whisper or what we're created to do and on purpose for on this planet really is creating from a place of possibility versus circumstance or based on the circumstances others deem as quote unquote successful.
Exactly. And some of the things that our soul calls us to do aren't even meant to be vocations. They're not even meant to be jobs. Some might be, but there's others that there was something I noticed a while ago, actually just a few months ago, and we were going through one of our programs, and I go through it myself with everybody. And one of the things I ask people to do is to look back into their life, even in their little life as a kid. What are some things that keep coming up? And one thing I'd literally never noticed before was that I'm always organizing trips with my friends, whether it's to go climb a mountain 2 weeks ago, whether it was last year, getting some buddies to all go to Iceland the year before, Guatemala. It just all these, some big, some little. And I was like, oh, that's literally a theme since I was 17. I did that with a bunch of friends and we took off to Australia for 6 months. Always this catalyst, but I would have never thought that. There's something that's in me. But I don't have to go and become a full-time tour guide or create a travel company, but that nourishes my soul. And so that should be something that's regularly in my life, whether that's yearly or I don't know, twice a year. I should think about that.
It's beautiful. I think it's another good reminder. People will think that, oh, I have to make money off my purpose. And that's not necessarily true. I just also want to make another distinction that I feel like you made at the beginning, which is there is a difference between what other people would consider quote unquote fulfilling and purposeful work and what you as the individual doing the work consider as purposeful. And so making that distinction, I think, is really important for people.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the beautiful thing about life is as we grow and as we evolve, we will even define purposeful work different. What was purposeful work for me 20 years ago might now seem less purposeful, or I might see more of my ego in it than I would care to admit 20 years ago. And then I think differently now. But that's not to judge that or even to judge the current moment, but it's just to know that, yeah, fulfillment is important, but it can evolve as we go through time.
Beautiful. Okay, so we've been talking about becoming and just doing the inner work, and really that's all about slowing down. And then you have this book called The Call to Climb, which feels very much of a doing energy. So I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about the call to climb and how do we bridge the being to the doing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the Call to Climb, which just came out, but it really is a big catalyst, of course, was my own life that we shared at the beginning of this podcast. And that is that the Call to Climb is a fable. It's about someone who stumbles into this remote village in the Bolivian Andes, only to find out that this village has been waiting for them because there is a magical mountain that calls you to climb when you're out of alignment with your soul, when you need to have a conversation with your soul that you've been avoiding and you can't avoid it any longer. So the entire story is about this climb, but really the climb is more of an inward journey than it is upward. Of course, they both go hand in hand. As we go inward and as we grow, we do elevate. So the book is all about understanding the repetitive loops that we live our life in because of the programming that we've been given, so much of it as kids. But we don't actually live our own authentic life until we start to become aware and become intentional about how we want to live. So that goes back to that spiritual compass, is creating that spiritual compass and then looking at it as I live my life. I can look at it in the morning and I can go out and live my life. And then I can look at it again at night and I can notice, whoa, I veered way off course. Why was that? And this is the process of us beginning to live an examined life. And by examining our life, that's when we uncover the patterns, the programs, the matrix, so to speak, that we didn't even ask for, but was just imprinted on us. But that's when we can start to make those shifts. Part of the story, as the main character is climbing, and they begin to realize that, wait a minute, it's a little bit like the analogy I mentioned in the book. It's like when we were born, it's like somebody, and a lot of people, took this book that was our life, all these blank pages, and just began to write in it of what we are, who we are, our emotional signature, what's important. And at some point they hand us this book and this is you. And then we live that book out for a number of years until we start to go, wait a minute, this doesn't fit. And that's partly where that, especially in midlife, where those feelings come like, wait a minute, I don't know that I want to be a lawyer. How did I get into law school? And we start asking those questions. Part of really living your life is taking the pens back from everyone and just, I'll take it from here. I'll start to write my story and then not to be worried about what people think of your story as you write it. And when you can free yourself up from that, the approval from others, the approval from the tribe, just so much the goal of the ego. And we can just go, wait a minute, what does my soul want to express here? Because here's the thing about the soul doesn't care what people think. Like your soul doesn't care what the tribe thinks. Your ego does, of course, because it relates that approval with safety. But the soul just wants to express, wants to create, wants to be authentic. And so to me, that's part of the challenge as we climb, right? Is to start taking the soul's path more and more and more. But what we don't realize is that deep inside of us, as James Hollis says, there's actually a shadow government that runs the show. We don't like to think of it like that because we don't see it. But what we don't see is what actually masters us. So part of the idea of the climb is to start to get intentional about what's driving me. Why did I snap at that person? Why am I always triggered around this person and they've never done anything wrong to me? And starting to realize that all of that programming is there to be changed if we want to. We don't have to, but if we really want to change it, because permission to live your life is not something that is given to you. You have to take it. You have to seize it.
Absolutely. Once we start recognizing the shadow government, what could we do to start claiming freedom from that?
So once we start to realize that there are some rules that I live by that I don't want to live by. Well, what happens is when we start to, let's go back to that spiritual compass again. We've decided that, okay, one of my commitments is to be authentic to my soul and its expression. My soul is going to want to express and create, and that might mean making a video on YouTube or a post or something. But my ego is going to be right there going, oh, I don't know if you should post that. Like some people may not like that. That's kind of strong. Maybe you should tone that down a bit. Right,
Mhm.
but the soul wants to express. So when I begin to notice that anxiety, awesome. Now I could sit with that for a minute. I can wonder, what's this wanting me to do? Like, don't post this or water it down a bit. Okay, but what's that in service to? And that's really a great question to serve you is like, what is this in service to? It's wanting me to be safe. It's wanting me not to upset anyone, not to rock the boat, not to potentially be cut off, lose followers, whatever it might be. Once we can see that, we don't judge it. Don't get mad at yourself like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm so concerned what people think of me." Nah, don't judge that. Just go, "Okay, that's what that is, but I'm choosing a different path." And even as we can sit with that anxiety for a bit, it will start to just dissipate, and then we go ahead and we move ahead with our intention, move ahead with an action that's consistent with this compass that we've created. And as we do that, it's the repetition of stepping into that larger life that eventually it becomes our life. But initially, it's scary. And anxiety is a potent weapon to keep you in your place for sure.
It is very much. I feel like as we grow, there's a constant refining. And you mentioned earlier that your purpose can change. What you feel fulfills you can shift a little bit here and there. Do you feel like you, James Robbins, are in a space where like you have it? I'm good. I have it all together. This is exactly what I was supposed to be doing. I am the oak tree. Or is there a constant refining?
Well, to the first half of that question, heavens no. I'm just constantly like, okay, let's keep going, let's keep expanding. And I guess because I am intentional, I see all the areas where I still have things that, wait a minute, why am I still doing this? I want to go this way. But
Mhm.
also life is a series of mastering moments. So you get to the top of a summit. Okay, well, what next? Getting to the top of a mountain changes how you see things. But then there's more mountains. And so which one are you going to climb next? Because we're born to walk uphill. We are born to walk into a headwind. It's where we are our best. Now, of course, we need breaks. We need seasons in base camp to recharge. But for the most of us, we are at our best when we are striving, struggling against something. I would think the day that I have nothing to strive for, man, I think that's like the beginning of the end. I would dread that moment. And not
Yeah.
from an achievement perspective, but just from a growth perspective. That's how I see it, anyways. Some people might see it differently, but I feel like for me, it reminds me of the quote from Alexander the Great when it said, when Alexander saw that there were no more worlds to conquer, he wept because there was purpose in that for him. Well, for me, there's purpose in expansion, in growth.
And hopefully that's a purpose for all of us. I know there's that saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. So you're right. The moment we stop striving, looking for areas to grow in, going deeper, I feel like the biggest world we can conquer is ourself. So Alexander the Great, like, there was more. You just didn't see it. It was right in front of you. Then that's when we start. The end comes near. And I feel like that's just nature. Everything it grows. And once it's done growing, it starts coming to its end as well. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with the listener as we say goodbye to you, James?
I'm so thankful that you've had me on your show here and just to honor you and what you do, the example that you've set and the way you've pushed through just things in your life and how you help other people. I think that's inspiring. And I hope you feel fulfilled as you're doing that because I could see that being so in line with who you are in my brief time I've got to know you. And for everyone else who's listening to this, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, there is something more for me, but you feel frustrated by that, please don't feel frustrated by it. Be more like a child that's in a state of awe. This is really cool. There's something else for me. There's something bigger for me. And what a great place to be because it's a place of wonder, of discovery, and embrace it and step into that.
Thank you, James. That word awe, I think we often don't apply to ourselves. It's something we look at outside of ourselves, like, wow, look at that view or that mountain. But when we look at ourselves, do we look at it with wonder and awe and curiosity and that energy to want to explore and go deeper and learn more about ourselves? And I think that's what you've gifted with us today with this episode, James. So thank you so much for being here and giving of your time so generously and of your knowledge. I want to encourage everybody out there to go get the book, The Call to Climb. I'm glad it's a fictional book. I love personal development books, and yet sometimes they can get dry. And so when someone can bring a fictional story to use as an analogy for what there is to learn more about, it just adds more of a texture and layers to the story of us, really. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Pauline.
To you who are listening, James' story, his book, is a reminder that the climb isn't about striving or hustling. It really is about becoming. You weren't created to blend in, you were designed to bring your most authentic, courageous, and soul led self to the world. So maybe your next small victory isn't a to do list item, but a moment of honesty, courage, or clarity about who you are becoming. If you are at a crossroads wondering if it is time to climb, I hope this episode gives you the permission and power to say yes to yourself, because living victoriously starts with showing up as the real you. Thank you for tuning in, and until we meet again, be blessed.
Angel of light, come into me. Show me what I need to see.